my God. It's the first time we can see her. She's so beautiful and classy. Good morning, Jill Wine-Banks.
Good morning. It's so nice to be with you.
I miss you so much. You know what I am?
No, and there's so much bad news on the legal front that's getting ignored because all we talk about is COVID.
I know.
And I understand why, but
Oh, no, she has
is a threat to democracy besides a threat to our health.
Yeah. Jill, I tweeted about it. You've probably seen. My quarantine read is Watergate Girl by Jill Wine-Banks. It is fantastic. And
meant to have a copy here.
Tell the Dalmatian. What's the Dalmatian's name?
I can't tell you.
Oh.
It's a secret.
Oh,
My husband is very protective.
Oh, he's in witness protection. Okay. Oh, all right. There's the book, The Watergate Girl. It's fantastic. It is seriously. The book is so great, and sadly, Jill, so timely. I wanted to ask you a couple things. I haven't even gotten through the whole thing yet because I'm savoring it like a fine wine. And I'm not drinking anymore, so it is my wine. But you even tweeted Nixon tried to get his signature on Social Security checks, but a brave civil service servant told him it was not a legal signatory and talked him out of it. Oh, to be back in the Watergate scandal instead of the Trump scandals. I mean, isn't that the irony of all this? He is so much more awful than Nixon, right?
There is no comparison. I think the threat to the free press, as bad as Nixon was, it wasn't as bad as having live press conferences where he berates the press. I just can't think of anything worse than what Trump does on a daily basis, aided and abetted by the Republican Party, aided and abetted especially now by William Barr, who's now taking Trump wants him to take. He's saying stay-at-home orders by the governors are not legal, which is nonsense. There is no legal basis for saying that. Of course, in times of emergency, governors have the power to protect the common good. And we know that staying at home is the best way to protect yourself and healthcare workers and your neighbors and your parents and your children.
Yeah.
Stay at home.
I mean, Jill, I was just going to ask you about this, but isn't that an interesting legal question? These, Liberate rallies, these AstroTurf right-wing funded things that are telling people to go out, but isn't it calling fire in a crowded theater? Because they're not just infecting themselves, they're infecting other people. They're going back to other communities and infecting people. I mean, how is that? Why should they not be arrested as domestic terrorists?
That's a good question. And obviously, I think that would be a good way to approach it. These people are standing shoulder to shoulder. They aren't wearing masks. They aren't protecting themselves, which means, while I know a lot of people have tweeted that they wish that they would all come down with coronavirus. And the only reason that I would say that's a bad idea is because then they present a greater danger to the healthcare workers who will have to take care of them.
Yeah.
And that's why they should be stopped from having these rallies.
Yeah.
I believe in the First Amendment. They can say whatever they want to say. They just can't right now say it in a crowd.
Yeah.
They can't be together. That's the only thing I would say. Say what you want, tweet it, whatever you want, but don't, and vote however you want.
Yeah.
If you believe that your governor is not protecting you, which clearly the governors are, then vote against that governor when the time comes.
Well, look at the people in Wisconsin, Jill. The right justices, including the Supreme Court, forced them to vote in a pandemic, which they did, and overwhelmingly crushed the Republicans that they know forced them to do this. And now at least 7 of them have been diagnosed with the coronavirus. I'm sure many more by the time this is over. I'm
sure the numbers are not ever going to be accurate because, as we know, most people are asymptomatic, or maybe not most, but a lot of people are asymptomatic, so they will never know that they had it. They will never get tested. And even those who come down with COVID-19, many will have mild symptoms, so they will think it's maybe the flu, or they'll think, well, I have it, but they'll never get tested. They'll never go to the hospital. We have no idea. When we talk about the death rate, we know how many people have died, but we don't know out of how many infected. So the death rate could be a very small percentage, or it could be a huge percentage. We don't know because we aren't testing. And until you test, you can't have people go back out into the workforce. And if stores reopen, Who's going to go? Anybody who's thinking is not going to go to a store. I need a haircut. I would love to get one, but I wouldn't go into a shop.
And how about all this, states' rights nonsense the Republicans have always talked about? And now he's like, oh, Pritzker doesn't know anything about Illinois. He doesn't know what he's doing. And Governor Pritzker's doing a great job in Illinois, isn't he?
Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot and everybody in Illinois is doing a really good job. But, the Evanston mayor has issued a mandatory wearing mask or you can't be in public. And I think that's really important. I made a mask, by the way, to match the pin today in the same color scheme. It's so simple to make masks. I hope everyone knows. I mean, you can obviously tie a scarf or a bandana around your mouth and nose. But if you really want to have more protection, you need it to fit tighter to your face.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is accordion pleat a piece of fabric or even a paper towel. And paper towel has an advantage because you can then staple it. You don't have to sew it. I've been using pins because I'm not good at sewing.
And do you have Do you have extra pins laying around?
Safety pins? Yes, absolutely. Oh, I didn't even think of that.
There you go.
Got a whole new way to wear pins. My rubber bands to my mask.
Can we tell people you're wearing my mom's pin that I gave you? The blue looks like a blue wave to me at the last Sexy Liberal.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. And then I have another blue wave pin from you, which I will also be wearing. And I have a collection now of blue waves. I'll have to repeat pins because I plan to wear blue from now until November.
Yep, thank you.
Encourage voting blue in 2020.
That's right. All right, let's get to some of the legal stuff. First of all, I just wanted to say one of the things I was struck by in your book was a lot of the secretaries that had to transcribe the Nixon tapes were crying a lot because they were so struck by how awful the American president was, not just racist, but a crook, and that they actually were affected. I thought, what? Look at what's happened, Jill. When I'm reading that, I'm going, he says all that out loud. He's awful out loud and clearly a crook, and clearly half the Republicans know it and have said it, the ones that have left the administration or behind closed doors. But this really is, unlike Nixon, this really is a cult now. I mean, you're wearing my mom's pin, but as we keep talking about, my dad's running mate Goldwater, as you write in your book, was one of the people that went to the White House and said, you got to go. But we're just in way on, it literally is a cult, isn't it, we're dealing with?
It is a cult, and it's not the time of Watergate when there was bipartisan support for impeachment vote, for actually, as you said, Goldwater and two other Republicans, the leader of the House, the minority leader of the House and the Senate, went with him to the White House and said, you do not have enough votes in the Senate to survive. You will be convicted unless you resign. And Richard Nixon, instead of fighting it, said, okay, and he resigned the next day. That would never happen in this administration. We now have Fox News broadcasting alternative facts, which by definition are lies. A fact is a fact.
They might want to lawyer up at some point. I mean, they just did a study that people were more likely to die of coronavirus that watch Hannity. Yeah. I mean, they've been pushing hydroxychloroquine. They've been downplaying it. I mean, there are families now that are coming out and saying, my husband is dead because he listened to the president and who said it's no big deal and he's not going to wear a mask and this is a hoax and
There's now a study, 300 veterans were given hydroxychloroquine.
Yep.
They were more likely to die than survive COVID-19 as a result of getting that drug. So that's a really significant thing. The study that had been done that the president relies on, every doctor in the world has said is not a valid study. It's too small and it doesn't mean anything. And that taking it has obviously side effects, but in addition now seems to not only not be helpful to getting over COVID-19, but could be harmful.
Jill, I've said it over and over. My 97-year-old Trump voting Republican Fox News watching mom is listening to her family, her loved ones, and being safe. And I hope people do that and do not listen to Trump. Don't listen to Fox News. Do what you know, and the polling is showing in your heart that this is not safe. Let's get to the legal stuff because obviously I'm sure you were shocked at the bipartisan Senate Republican-led Senate report that said, as it turns out, Russia was meddled in the election to benefit Donald Trump.
You don't say.
Yes. So Bill Barr lied. Obviously, that's what that proves. And now Barr does not rule out the John Durham probe indictments dropping just before the election, the investigation of the Russia investigation, which they're clearly trying to gin up something that is nothing, aren't they?
Not only are they trying to gin up something that's nothing, but it is a long-standing policy of the Department of Justice not to interfere in elections. There was an additional indictment. This is after the Watergate trial. There were more indictments that came down, and there was a decision made that they would not be announced right before the election, even though they were ready, because that has an influence on the election that has nothing to do with reality and shouldn't affect it. And, an indictment doesn't mean you're guilty, although that is what people will assume, and they may vote based on that. We know from the last election, aside from the Russian meddling, the actions of Comey dramatically influenced the outcome of the election. I was campaigning in Iowa, and I know from talking to voters, going door to door and talking to them, that even Democrats were saying, I can't vote early. I have to wait until I see the results and make sure the next shoe doesn't drop. And then it did.
Yeah.
And they knew for sure they would never vote for Hillary because of that, even though in the very end, it turned out there was nothing there.
Yep.
And so I hope you've seen the documentary on Hulu about Hillary. It's fabulous.
Yeah, Schiff and Nadler seek a probe of Barr for comments on the Trump move to fire this intel watchdog. So they're I don't know. I hope justice is coming, as Glenn Kirshner says, but perhaps not till we vote them out, because it's, once again, so they're asking internal Justice Department watchdogs to investigate Bill Barr for recent comments they say misrepresented the facts about Trump's decision to fire Michael Atkinson.
Right.
He said the role of Attorney General Barr and other senior DOJ officials in coordination with the White House in attempting to prevent the whistleblower complaint from reaching Congress as required by law warrants your attention. I mean, God bless Schiff, who we just had on last week. That's the thing. People like you that believe in justice, like, you've got to try to, move forward, even though you just go, we have no Justice Department. Bill Barr's not going to be held to account for anything until we kick them out. Right?
I hope he will eventually be held to account, because he has lied about so many things. He's been rebuked by a court. He has lied and lied and lied. He's misled the public deliberately. He auditioned for the job by writing a memo saying ridiculous things. He then withheld the public from hearing the full Mueller report, and he announced his results, his conclusion that there was no collusion. And even though he knew that the report didn't say that.
Well, and the unredacted Mueller report is probably is coming soon, as Judge Walton obviously is looking at it. I'm looking forward to reading that, but a little less than Watergate Girl, than finishing Watergate Girl. Unredacted Mueller report, Watergate Girl is my first on my list. I love it. We've already cast Charlize Theron in your role, the movie version.
That's right.
Of Watergate Girl. I love how you stood up for yourself, even back in the day when you were the only lady lawyer. You stood up for yourself. I mean, I wouldn't want to be across the prosecution table from you, but you did it with grace. You're nice. You're not nasty, but you were teaching women even back then how to assert themselves and stand up for themselves, right?
We tried, and it's so interesting how I now feel about my chief opponent in the 18-minute gap issue.
Rosemary Woods.
That's right.
Rosemary Woods, who in another era would have been the chief of staff instead of the executive assistant.
Yeah.
She really was a close advisor to the president. And if you listen to tapes post what we were doing, you will see how much he sought her advice. Yeah. And she was really a much more powerful character than we thought of at the time. And
you show great empathy for her in the book. And also, Jill was a saucy little minx. There's a lot of personal details in the book that are so fantastic. We love it. Watergate Girl.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it and didn't think less of me for my diversions from life.
No, we already talked to Politicon.
Yeah.
I know the whole story. Okay, I love you.
I think an FX miniseries based on Watergate Girl would be a great companion piece to Mrs. America, which is currently on right now.
Hello, FX.
Okay, I'm all for that.
Yeah,
I'm going to work on that one for you,
because it's
Jill.
around the same era, and I think it would be a great answer to Mrs. America.
Love you, miss you. See you whenever Chicago
Thank
Sexy
you.
Liberal is. Which I don't know. It's coming sometime.
coming.
Maybe it'll be before the election.
Yes, maybe October. That's when we're thinking now.
Yeah.
Okay. Love you. Miss you.
Love you.
Bye.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.